we put a lot of time into this. We'll run a half hour, but that doesn't go into like the 2 hours we do in prep day of the research that we do in the weeks leading up to it. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that this didn't come up in all of our
prep meetings.
Prep meetings. But it looks to me like you've got the like an IMDb type of page up for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Aren't we talking about Hijack?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Now
we're talking about both?
We're going to talk about both. So here's what I figured we'd do for this season, if you will. Saison. This period. This...
Don't say period.
Return from the break. I wanted to talk about Night of the Seven Kingdoms because it is a new show. And as we know, Hijack, we're into season 2, which is a good show. I think there will just be a little less to talk about with Hijack. And I think Night of the Seven Kingdoms is going to be a little bit more that we can dig into the meat of it. And I'm very enthralled by this show because so far it has the highest rating of any Game of Thrones show, if I'm quoting this right, or at least in the last 10 years. So its opening episode has an IMDb rating of 8.2 stars, which I find a little surprising, not because I didn't think it was a good episode, but because I thought it was a little bit of an empty episode. And we can get into that, but I find it surprising because I did enjoy the episode, but I also enjoyed it the same way I think most people who watched the first Harry Potter movie did, and it's that they already know all the lore and they already know the story, and they just got a picture of the magical world they've been envisioning all along, and they know what all of this means. But the entire episode was just inside baseball. There was no if you watched it without any knowledge of this of Game of Thrones period or any knowledge of the books period, it was a pretty wandering episode, and I'm okay with that. I just think it's interesting that everybody's like, they're back, they're in their prime, they're in their form. Whereas to me, I go, that was a good episode, and I'm glad that we're slow playing it because there actually isn't a ridiculous ton of action in the Dunk and Egg book.
Well, when I was...
Oh, what the fuck are we even doing?
We're going to have you wanted to have a beer?
Was this a dry up?
I'm getting...
I'm already 2 beers deep today, too, by the way.
Because you were celebrating...
No, I went to dinner
milestone.
with a friend.
What are you doing? What is wrong with you?
Greg's in town from LA, so I only got to see him for...
Greg with 2 G's?
Greg with 2 G's.
Did you tell Greg I said hi?
I did.
Dope.
I even said he could join us tonight if he wanted to. He said, nah. Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah. So I must have been asleep when you said we were going to talk about this one.
I did.
You must have snuck in my house after hours and whispered it into my ear.
To be fair.
Where could this be going?
I did not directly tell you we would be covering this show. We did discuss that we might cover this show. It was one of the 2 options you gave me.
Yeah.
The other one of which we are also talking about. I did, however, tell the audience that we would be covering this show.
Oh, well, we can't let down the fans.
So I sent out last week. I sent out a, hey, we're not here this week. I'm out of the country. And but we'll be back next week to talk about Night of the Seven Kingdoms and more.
Interesting. Well, when I was thinking about Hijack, and we should just get right into Hijack too. I was thinking about both of the episodes. They have some similarities. 1, they are both television shows. 2, they are both season premieres. 3, we watched them on the same day. And 4, I think both of them actually were very wandery. Nothing really happened at the end of the episode. And still, I enjoyed both of them very much.
One distinct difference between the 2 is that Hijack season 2, episode 1, the end of it was a cliffhanger, and it was much more like the first episode of Game of Thrones where you're like, oh, shit, we got ice zombies.
Yeah. In my head, I was going back through what happened in the apps, and I was like, what? There's not a ton of actually bullet points that I would put in bold.
It was all just tension building, and it was all misdirect. which I thought it played the misdirect very well, because I definitely it played the misdirect. You knew they were misdirecting you, but it wasn't the misdirect I expected, even though I knew what it was at the last moments before it happened, but that's not giving myself a whole lot of credit. My thought was that they were playing that he's just paranoid now ever since, and so he's like being off about something. And then obviously the twist being, spoiler alert, he's the one hijacking the train.
But you wanted to start with Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I
5 minutes and 45 seconds in, and we are on point.
I love Game of Thrones. I've read all the books that George R.R. has made available to us of the main series. I have read the first novella, the Duncan Egg first novella. I've read House of the Dragon. We watched all of the Game of Thrones series. We watched all the House of Dragon. So we're balls deep in Game of Thrones. From lore, we were in real time fans watching the show, buying up at least me buying up the books and reading the hell out of them multiple times. Probably my favorite fantasy series of all of them. I love it. I think it's great. I'm very excited to have another Game of Thrones TV show to sink our
we're not getting any more books.
Teeth into. Probably not. Apparently there's more than one novella, 4 or 5, maybe something like that. I'm not surprised that this would get that high of a rating, because it is kind of a back to basics. We're back in the world. We're doing fun Game of Thrones things. It's not like House of Dragon, I think we both enjoyed, but that was just dense as hell, and it was just a chore to keep up with. And
there was also a writer's strike in the middle of it, and it was just a chore to keep up with who is what and where is why and what's going on and how are all these people related to each other and why do they all have the same I think
name.
House of Dragons requires homework in the same way that what makes this new show entertaining is that you've read the book, but you don't need to know every single person. You just have to know what the plot point is. Where in House of Dragons, you have to know if they say a family name and you don't know who that family member is and what color they
exactly
and banner and family that they're under, then you missed the entire episode.
And then of course later seasons of Game of Thrones came with such high expectations. The finale in the last season was not widely embraced, I'll say. I thought personally the last season was incredibly rushed. I really wish they could have spread out a lot of...
So you're going on to say that season 8 of Game of Thrones wasn't good?
I don't want to say that it wasn't good, but I think the biggest problem with it was that it was rushed, that they tried to cram too much stuff into it. I think the creators were a little bit done in the world and just sort of wanted to bang it out and just stuffed too much stuff in there.
Now, I love how we're way off topic and on topic. It's an interesting take. I mean, not an interesting take. It's the take. I agree with you, but I think what I think is so interesting about that is the writers wrote themselves into that from a TV perspective, but also George R.R. Martin has wrote us into that problem. And we've talked about this before. Some of the things that make the book so good, and I won't say this is a lazy form of writing. It's a smart way to do it, where he goes, then it's all told from a perspective of a narrator, and we know that the narrators aren't reliable. Mm-hmm. So you can retcon something very easily and just be like, well, that's how they saw it. That's not actually what happened. That's not the truth behind it. And I think that's powerful in their stories. But it's also I don't know if there is a way to write the story and make it land. Because what makes the Game of Thrones series of all his series so wonderful is that there are so many machinations going on, and you can't predict them because there's literally, I don't think he knows the ending. So it's predictable when you have to finish a story. Everything that's lining up to that story has predictable pieces that are putting the puzzle into place. and there's not a lot of that predictability, very specifically because it seems more quote unquote realistic, if you will, in a world of magic and dragons, and that's what makes the books so interesting. But it's this thing where it's like it started here and it just spread out, and we're like here, and he's supposed to start turning it back now, and that's why he's struggling, I think. I don't know, I'm not in his head and I'm not a writer, but like I think he's at that point where he's like, I don't know how to bring it back together. And that's what they tried to do in like 1.5 seasons of the show, with of course all of the force of HBO coming down on them and being like, you have to finish this story and it has to happen in 7 episodes or 6 episodes. And yes, I think that, you know, it did a disservice, but I don't blame the showrunner so much for that. I just don't. I think they thought the story would be done.
I think
like,
they've gone on record and said that yeah, he's got a decade lead time on us. There's no way that we'll pass him up, and of course that's exactly what happened. Yeah. But I think that's correct. We want in our books and our television shows and our movies for every character to matter in some way to that end game that you're describing. And the scope of these books is such that it's just pretty impossible to make every character tied into that one central
and I've shared a video or two where they literally just like play every plot point that was dropped from the TV show in like the final season or the final several seasons. And I think it's just impossible to bring them back because all those characters are cool. And so when you read them in the book, you're like, oh, this is amazing.
Where's Lady Stoneheart?
Yeah,
Where's Lady Stoneheart?
Right? And you're like, well, why the fuck would you bring that up to add another 7 seasons of like show that they'd have to close? And it's like, it's interesting because you're like, yeah, they were telling the story because they didn't even know how it was supposed to come back to like close this story. Yeah, and so they had to drop those because otherwise they couldn't have finished the story, period. And I'm not saying there weren't better ways to do it and other people like couldn't write it and they didn't make mistakes, but I definitely give them a huge excuse in that they're supposed to base it off this material and the material did not finish, and it seems like an impossible task, which is why I don't think he's ever going to finish this next book, let alone the entire series, and especially if HBO keeps giving him producer credits on stuff and he's writing stories for video games, and you know.
Yeah, he does seem to sort of be.
And I don't blame him. Why would you, especially after seeing the criticism the like show got, and like he could die tomorrow and nothing but good things will be said about the book series. He could finish the book tomorrow or the series tomorrow, and the only risk like is that he doesn't do a good job. Like there's a much higher chance he will fuck that up than he will like create this series that they're like, it landed, it was perfect, you know? Like it would be much more easy for him to become the Wheel of Time and let somebody else finish the story for him and put it on their shoulders to fuck it up than for him to like land it.
It's probably what it's going to be, some like Sketches of My Sweetheart the Drunk type of posthumous album type of thing that we're going to get.
Like I told, Wheel of Time ended, but like Brandon Sanderson finished that for Robert Jordan.
Right.
He obviously had a like map, but it's funny because that became, I believe it became like 3 books became 6 or something like that because Brandon Sanderson took over. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, could you imagine taking this road map, if you want to call it a map, it's more of like a Venn diagram with 1,000 circles on it, and then being like, okay, let's map it all back together. And I've been told I can do it in 3 books. And then you're like, well, what about Lady Stoneheart? Back to the Knight of 7 Kingdoms. A very different version of Game of Thrones in my mind, but within the same world and all the beauty that is the same world.
You get all that goodwill that you have for the world, but none of that heavy expectations, homework.
It's also very distilled in a good way. It's interesting to see how much George R. R. Martin is kind of obsessed with the good Targaryen, if you will. The Targaryens in the in this book series, which we've only seen one for a brief moment, and they didn't really let on to it too much. You see him in the tavern. He says, "My lord," and then he kind of goes up the stairs and says, "Fucking don't pay attention to me." That was one of the Targaryens. That's one of the Targaryen brothers. Are portrayed in my mind in this book, as I remember, quite just and quite the good guy. And most of the characters in this book are good or bad. It's very idealistic of this period of time. You have very like heroic characters. We didn't have the reason I pulled up the IMDb is because I haven't had a chance to write notes. We only have a few characters so far that we saw in that first episode that matter at all. We've got Dunk, obviously. We've got his master, Sir Arlen of Pennytree, who was the knight that took him on. We've got Egg, obviously, who we don't know who that is yet. He's just an orphan boy.
I know who he is, but
Yes,
I'm very
I also
smart.
know.
Okay.
We've got Sir Lionel, the Laughing Riot, the Laughing Storm, who is a Baratheon, who we just know is important because he has the Baratheon name, and obviously he's royalty. And then we have the two Fossaway brothers, who we saw briefly. One of them was how we got invited into the tent, and then the other one is kind of a dick, but not necessarily a bad guy. And then we've got, of course, the Humphrey Harding, I think, who was the dick, I believe, who Arlen of Pennytree had worked for in the past. And he's like, a million knights have been injured in my service, which, cool, you're a great guy. Which, that's how he's portrayed. But I do think it's very interesting that every character is like clearly on one side or the other. The only one you might consider chaotic neutral would be Baratheon.
Yeah, it's much more conventional storytelling. We love Game of Thrones for subverting fantasy expectations, amongst other things. And so far, to my recollection, the whole first novella is a very conventional story writing, conventional characters like you're talking about. Not a lot of the nuances that you got from your Game of Thrones characters.
The way I wrote it or said it to you previously was that it's the Hobbit in my mind to Lord of the Rings, in that the tone is a lot brighter. There are still serious implications. There are still deaths. Obviously, there is some darkness to all of it. There's a very realistic grit to the idea of being a knight, but it's all more comedic. There's a little bit more jolly to all of it. Anyways, now that we're 18 minutes into the episode, we're introduced to Sir Dunk, who's not a knight yet, and he's bearing his previous charge, Arlen of Pennytree, and he kind of convinces himself that, you know what, he probably should be a knight and he should take that sword. I think in the book there's a little bit of vagueness to whether he was knighted or not. In the show, they make it pretty clear that he was not, and I think he has the similar character where I think he kind of idolizes Arlen of Pennytree, who was kind of a dick to him in a way. Not a horrible master, but kind of a dick. Which is, they play that in several little montages.
Some light
of
physical
hilarity.
abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he decides the only thing he can do, he could sell his horses, but he knows that'll just end up in him being a thief at some point because that money will run out and he'll have no way to be of any service. So he decides he's going to go join a tournament, and he runs into Egg on the way, who is he mistakes for a stable boy, I believe. And Egg, as he's leaving, says, "Hey, let me be your squire." And Dunk says, "Fuck off, I can't really pay for you or any either way, and I don't know what I'm doing." And I think in a way he's doing it because he doesn't want to drag someone else down in all of his bullshit. He wanders off to go join this tournament. He's told he can't join the tournament unless someone vouches for him being a knight, which in my mind I think is a little funny Like, how do they know who's a knight and who's not a knight in that time? It does seem, though, that like they educate royalty a lot on who's under what banner.
Yeah, but I mean,
but he's
you
a
don't have
hedge
the, it doesn't go into a database.
Yeah, they'd also, you just think they'd just take his money and be like, oh, this guy's just going to get fucking beat up in this tournament, which they kind of say. And he says, well, this person will obviously speak for my, my previous charge for Arlene Penetry. We, of course, finally get a run into this man who's quite a drunkard, and he is an absolute dick and blows him off and obviously does not really care who serves under him or under his father. And then he had a small run-in with the Fossaway, with Raymond Fossaway, and Raymond's older brother, Stefan. Raymond is the squire. And later on, the only reason that we get introduced to those two in this episode is that it's used as a way for him to get into Baratheon's tent, to get a little food, and then we get a little bromance between the two of them, which was quite a fun scene. I love that actor. We talked about how we saw him recently in The Gentleman. I'll definitely be curious to see more of him. Daniel Ings is the actor's name. And then that's kind of the end of the episode, is him running into Egg back at his camp, who set up a fire. They have a little heart-to-heart under the stars. And they have a little, we're the only ones who see the shooting star, so we're going to get all the luck of the shooting star. And that's kind of the end of the episode. There's not really a lot that happens. I thought it was a good episode. I thought it was very gentle. I just think it's very funny that people jumped on immediately and were like, we're back.
Yeah, there's no way it would be getting this score without the expectations and baggage that is with Game of Thrones at this point. It was a very short episode too. Was it just 40 minutes, something like that? It had a very short runtime, and you could feel it. I turned to you in surprise when the episode ended. I thought we had another, 20, it's a series premiere, 20, 30, 40 minutes to go. So that's part of the stakes as well, is that they're just very short episodes compared to Game of Thrones, which were an hour was a short Game of Thrones episode, especially towards season 7 and 8.
Well, I think that's the one thing that kind of worries me about this show, in that I think it'll be a great story, and I think it will turn out pretty great, and it's very simple, so it'd be hard to fuck up this first season, in that if you just tell the story, it's a good story, and the visions are good, and the setting is great, and you don't have to, there's no giant grand battle with dragons. I think we'll see a dragon or two, but it doesn't have the same stage that the previous Game of Thrones does. You pretty much all contained around this one castle. So I think it will go well, but I think you're going to miss the grandness of some of the other shows. I think this season, if it continues the way it's going, will be looked at quite well. But I just wonder how it will go afterwards. Like he talks about the novellas that he had mapped out after this one. And there's obviously a ton of more stories that Dunk and Egg go on to have. But I just don't know if any of them will be as good as this first one. Especially if somebody else has to write it and just figure it out.
The first novella was just told entirely from Dunk and Egg's perspective, if I remember correctly. We never went over...
I don't think we even gets told from Egg Spectre. I think it's completely
just
Dunk's,
completely...
If I remember correctly.
But we never go into another set of characters amongst the lords and ladies. I wonder if they'll continue that here as well, because... that'll certainly limit the
this
scope.
First episode, we did follow him entirely. There was no other perspective. I could see that continuing. I would like it. I think you it would be a miss if they tried to stray too far from the story or do something too creative with this. I think that book was written like a television series. So I think if you just stick with it, it'll turn out great.
At the risk of that you could do with Egg's family,
Sure.
wondering where he's gone,
Right.
and what's happening on that side of the fence, which they never do, at least in the first
We just get a
novella.
little dialogue about it at the end.
Yeah, I wonder if they go over there and do a behind the scenes over on that side.
I
at
could
some
see
point.
a couple scenes where you'll see them mentioning that someone's been missing for several weeks, and Damien getting yelled at. On to Hijack,
I'd love that.
season 2, episode 1.
You just watched
Hijack.
stylized. I learned today. H/Jack. Did you know this?
I
did not know this until today.
I did not.
We both watched season 1, although in different
I watched it on a
modes.
plane.
On your phone, all at once,
Well, 2 times. 2 sits.
there and back.
Yep.
What did you think of season 1
It was great.
broadly? Yeah. This is the type of story that I really love, where they give away in the title that this is a very contained set.
We're doing this on a plane.
Right, and my intrigue is really to see how much tension and action they can wring from this towel without it getting stale. And I'm thinking about movies like Panic Room, anything on a plane, Flight Plan, Red Eye. Do you remember that Colin Farrell movie, Phone Booth?
Yeah.
I
Which is
had
based
to
on a play.
I had to watch Phone Booth just to see, do they ever leave the fucking phone booth?
Phone Booth is the movie was bad. It's based on a quite good play, actually, but the movie did not capture that.
And I want to make this. I'm not talking about play type of
Yes.
things there, because this is I'm talking about the action version of these. A play is different. A play is the drama, the interpersonal
Yep.
tension. I'm talking about an action movie that is set in one distinct location.
Yep.
And that was really the selling point for me for Hijack season 1, that this is an expertly done television. Now all of a sudden we got 8 hours instead of a movie of 2. 4 times that amount of time in the plane. How can we sustain the tension all in this single location?
And I think that was like my favorite part about the show, was that every moment I thought it was going to get stale, or every moment I thought it was going to get there would be a resolution, and we play it out for the sake of playing it out. There was a twist that happened somewhere every ep, whether it be at the beginning or the end or somewhere in the middle, that made every episode very interesting. And the tension the entire time was high, no matter which episode we were on, because someone was always in actual real danger.
Now we go to season 2, and I mean,
Can we actually talk about, though, there was one bad part about season 1, and it was the face-off at the end, when they get locked on the plane, and it's the 2 of them.
after it's landed?
Yeah, that felt very much like the Two-Face part of Batman to me. With, like, you think Batman is over, and then we've got another 45 minutes with a new villain that they just decided to add to Batman.
I didn't mind that much. I kind of like that.
It was
little
short,
action coda.
So
on
what
there.
I just felt like it was kind of unnecessary, because I don't, as much as those 2 were like the face-off of the episode, 2 things that happened at that point. They had come to realize they were on the same side to a portion, and then you realize there was a larger bad guy. And so to me, it wasn't that, like, I didn't need the resolution of their head-to-head battle, because we know there's another baddie bad. And so at that point, this bad guy doesn't matter as much anymore. Whereas, like, that's a very typical ending of a movie, where, like, the bad guy knows he's caught, but he wants to get his, like, little piece of revenge, but he's not really. But it was short enough that it's not like it, like, bothered me. I just thought it didn't really fit the prestige that the rest of the episode was. I did love the stepdad story, though, and the boyfriend saving the son. Like that part I thought was actually really good and not in a like very stereotypical way. It was like I thought that was an interesting piece where you're like, oh, this is just a good adult doing like what a good adult should, which is just like this kid is being a shit, but for like a normal reason, like that you would be a shit. You're like, family dynamics are tough, and he's like handling it quite well.
I agree with that. And also, I think we should say what a great job Idris Elba did. Yeah. That's a big reason why it worked, is because he did such a great job in that part.
I also love that he wasn't a superhero. Mm-hmm. Like there was a moment where he grabs the gun and there's like a little bit of that, but there was a lot of when he would struggle with people who were like, they didn't make him into like a martial arts. It wasn't, what's the Indiana Jones movie where he's the president? Air Force One.
Oh,
I had to get to it.
Where Harrison Ford is? Yes, Harrison Ford was the president in Air Force One, and that is a hell of a movie.
It is, but like but he almost is. It wasn't that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it made this version interesting.
What
that he
president
like
do you think could throw the best punch?
Well, Ronald Reagan could throw a good act punch, good stage punch.
Yeah, but we got to move past kayfabe because these are real fights.
Probably original FDR before he was in the wheelchair.
Was he very strong?
He's a big guy. I think
Taft was a big guy.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Taft would have some weight behind that thing.
Not Woodrow Wilson.
No.
He'd be the first I'd say wouldn't throw one. And punch him in the glasses and
yeah. The risk of season 2 is, of course, we're taking this contained
hijack. The hijack
story.
Is no longer hijacked. What are we hijacking?
There was never Phone Booth 2. There was never Panic Room 2,
nope.
because these things kind of don't work.
There was never Air Force 2.
Do you remember? Did you watch Prison Break?
The first half of the season.
The first season was incredible, planning out the prison break. But then at the end of season 1, they broke out, and then they did another 5 seasons. To extremely diminishing returns. So now I feel like these show creators and Idris Elba are cut above the Prison Break showrunners, but we had a fantastic first season. I think there was some concern on my part.
I was very curious if it was going to be another plane situation.
They pivoted to,
from moment 1, you knew it was going to be a train.
Choo-choo train.
They went, woo, woo. That's how they started the episode. It was like, hijack, woo, woo, everybody on board.
I love choo-choo trains.
We're in Germany.
Berlin.
We are in Berlin. We get some characters from Dark, which is funny because I was literally talking about Dark as it happened. We got Martha from Dark. She's our air traffic control character, if you will, from the first season. We get absolutely no story in the first episode. It's all, I love that we can tell this kind of a story now and not be worried about them canceling the show. Like if you did a pilot like that in the 90s, they'd be like, what's the show?
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
And this entire one, the entire tension of this episode was for the last 20 seconds of payoff. I love that this show has subverted us enough that we don't know who's good, who's bad. We don't know who is under whose thumb and who's doing what. It's clear that most everyone involved in this hijacking is doing it unwillingly. Well, I don't know that entirely. We definitely know that the engineer who, quote unquote, was told to drive this train off somewhere else is doing it under duress.
He seems wildly compromised. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know about the engineer who changed the tracks. I assume he's just a general baddie bad.
I mean, there is a crew of people we think they think are good, because the
Yep.
police did break in and find their little encampment, but it does look like they've compromised a few people along the way.
I'm gonna call her Martha, but we'll find out what her name is later at some point. But I don't think she's involved. She's definitely the like, I'm new to the night shift, and something's gonna happen on my first day. We get a little attention where clearly something's going on with the train driver, and they don't replace him.
Mhm.
I said the same comment about season 1, but why is there not a way to just take over? It seems even more egregious with a train that you can't just be like, we're going to turn your train off, George, here from the control room, because 5 of us have come together and voted, and we can all turn our key at the same time. And
They're in Germany, and the Germans don't have that technology.
Okay. Because they're not known for being a technological people.
No, famously behind.
Okay. On manufacturing and technology.
And it's because they're unfortunately genetically inferior.
Okay. Is that reverse Nazism?
No, that's a stone cold truth.
What we find out at the end is that Idris is the one hijacking the train. Which,
wonderful reveal.
It was a great twist.
I
saw it right when it happened.
You
I
can
went,
start to see it coming.
I get it. But it was a very good twist because he's doing all these things that they very well play out, very well shoot, and very well act. That you're like, he's panicking about something. He's trying to get somewhere. We know he's stressed about this train situation. He's looking at everyone like they're doing something wrong, but it's him doing something wrong, and he actually socially maneuvered everything. Which, back to season 1, something I really liked about his character is he was morally ambiguous. Even when he's the hero, he makes a lot of bad decisions. He is in it for a selfish reason. He says it outright that this is what he's in this for. He does care about people a little bit, but my favorite part in that first season is when the quote-unquote hijacker, after he's given up and been trapped, sees this guy socially engineering the new hijacker who's taken over the plane and realizes that like everything he says is like absolute bullshit and filled with a tinge of like, I'm just getting what I want out of this, and everything I say is for that. And I thought it was interesting, like him coming to that realization. And so we know in this season, we don't know if he's a good guy. My assumption is that his wife or his ex-wife is under the watch of the mob. She's either in witness protection or a hostage.
She's in Ireland, right?
Yeah. Or out in the
Scottish
country,
Highlands,
yeah.
or something like that. We see her for one scene where she gets some flowers.
And she looks very stressed out.
Yeah. They're for an anniversary. She is by herself.
And you know who we don't see?
We don't see Idris.
Nope.
We don't see her. Is it husband or is it boyfriend partner? We don't see the kid.
Yep.
We don't see anybody.
Yeah.
We just see her for that one scene. So that's
we're led
out
to
there.
believe it seems kind of like a holiday, but she's a little off about it. Because I believe the lady says, like, the lady who delivers this package that was either misplaced or socially engineered to be delivered by her comments on her being, like, out here for holiday, basically, which is, of course, an assumption, but it kind of leads you as the viewer to think that. But she also seems very awkward, which at the end of the whole episode is when I came up. That's my thought, is that she is under duress, but I think it's more likely she's hiding. Her son is kidnapped, and Idris is working to protect him.
I could see that.
And I think it's a revenge situation with the mob that was not murdered.
Yeah, that's the other thing you have to do is, like, is this...
It has to tie back. You can't have these two mobsters released. You can't have the Chekhov's mobster and not have something.
That was always a problem with the next 24 season or the next Die Hard movie. Is like, boy, this guy is the most unlucky person on God's green earth. How it,
Which is what I thought might be what this season was.
he's on another mass transit vehicle that gets hijacked. How is that possible?
I immediately thought it was going to be a revenge scenario with the mobsters. That makes the most sense, and it actually it works.
I like that.
Works as a story. But I think it's great that they turn that on the head, and he's being used in some way, whether it involves that mob or not. I think it obviously should. I don't think that's a lazy thing. Even though it's an obvious thing, it's got to involve them, because otherwise, unless they bring him back season 3, but again, then you're just like, why is his luck so bad?
Yeah.
Do they do a hijack season 3?
Oh God, I hope so. This is at
what do they hijack
well, they did
scooter.
They did planes.
Lime
They
scooter?
did trains. So it's got to be automobiles.
Automobiles.
It's got to be automobiles.
A bus. We're gonna get back to speed.
Oh, don't tempt me with a good time. This is, at the end of the day, I don't see this as a prestige TV show. I see this as a popcorn action
I see it as a
TV
very
show,
high-end
but
popcorn.
the best version of those.
Yeah.
So obviously that last line, him saying, "I'm hijacking this train," I wanted to throw popcorn at the screen. I wanted to stand up and cheer.
Chicken
I wanted to just roll right into the next.
What's the Minecraft?
Yep. Oh, I don't know.
Chicken jockey?
I'm not
That's
in
what
those
it is.
streets.
You wanted the chicken jockey moment?
Yeah,
You wanted
sure.
your 6-7?
Yeah. That what a wonderful last scene, meandering rest of the episode, and I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Yep. I'm with you.
It was I'll go back to another album. I've been listening to Jane Remover, her second album.
Okay.
She's got a bunch of songs that are like 6 minutes, and a lot of them will lull you kind of to sleep with just very atmospheric verse, chorus, all of a sudden to like in minute 4, just bonks you over the head with a giant shoegaze, screamy type of I'm hijacking this train type of thing. You could rewatch that and just wait for that chorus to hit.
Yeah, we're obviously not getting the next The Wire, but we are getting something you could watch over and over and over again and enjoy the show. It's the highest version of a pop song for sure.
I loved it.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'd love to watch the next one.
We should do that.
Okay. Well, stay gold.
Stay gold, Pony Boy.